It's over a century since the First World War ended, and with the last veterans having passed away by 2012, it lies beyond living memory. As that chronological distance grows, it perhaps becomes more difficult to understand and appreciate the significance of the First World War and the ways in which it affected both those at the time and the world in which we live today. It becomes more difficult for us to see the people in those monochrome photographs printed in the history books for the individual human beings that they once were. Yet, they all had their own lives, their own hopes, their own dreams, their own loved ones, and, of course, their own fears. I hope my words today may help bring us a little closer to those who experienced the First World War and appreciate the sacrifices that they made. Some years ago, I first became aware of my great-grandfather's involvement in the First World War. He was called James Joshua Jones. Born in London on the 21st of December 1887, he appears to have had an unremarkable childhood. At some stage by the early 1900s, he was working as a porter for the post office and would have been tasked with a lot of manual work in sorting offices. In September 1905, he changed careers by enlisting in the British Army, joining the 2nd Battalion of the Queen's Royal West Surrey Regiment. Originally formed in 1661, this was the oldest line infantry regiment in existence in the British Army, so it had a legendary reputation and a long history. He would go on to serve in India, South Africa and France, and by 1912 he had been promoted to the rank of Lance Corporal. Bucking social conventions at the time, he became a father outside of marriage in 1912 and was married by 1914. When Britain declared war on Germany on the 4th of August 1914, my great-grandfather's battalion was stationed in South Africa. On the 6th of August it received urgent orders to return to England, where it spent September being reorganised, re-equipped and reinforced with additional recruits. By the 6th of October it had been deployed in Belgium, and from that point on the battalion contributed to the Allies' efforts to resist the German invasion. It's important to appreciate here that people's expectations were for the war to be over by Christmas of 1914, yet few people seem to foresee what the impact of industrialisation and modern technology would be on the battlefield. The British Expeditionary Force was almost exhausted by the end of 1914, prompting a major recruitment drive by the British military. The urgency of the situation contributed to rather lax checks on volunteers' ages, and in some cases, boys as young as 12 ended up in the ranks. Despite how some might regard such actions now, the combined efforts of British, French and Belgian soldiers meant Western Europe was not overrun during the winter of 1914 to 1915. My great-grandfather remained in action into May 1915 and was by then a sergeant. By this time, Allied High Command had devised a strategy to cut German supply lines and thereby weaken their hold on northern France and Belgium. One of the areas identified by General Douglas Haig as crucial for this effort was a village called Festubert, which was near the Belgian border and which was fought over from the 15th to the 25th of May. For nearly 3 days, British artillery bombarded the German lines, firing 100,000 shells in the hope of destroying machine gun positions and stunning the German soldiers prior to the regular infantry attacking. The opening waves included many recently arrived, inexperienced troops. Casualties were severe. At 11 p.m. on the 15th of May, British, Indian and Canadian troops were ordered to advance on the German positions. German soldiers had sheltered deep underground and, once the artillery ceased firing, quickly emerged from their bunkers and set up their machine guns. The Allies suffered very heavy casualties, but in spite of this, a second attack was ordered to begin early on the morning of the 16th of May. My great-grandfather was part of this second wave. As a 28-year-old sergeant, he would have had considerable responsibility for supporting the officers and for leading other soldiers into combat. And as someone who had already experienced several months of the war, he would have been a solid role model for those who, in all probability, were considerably younger than him. It rained heavily during the night of the 15th to the 16th of May. At 2:30 a.m. on the 16th of May, rum was issued to the soldiers. It was no doubt intended that this would help calm their nerves and boost morale, especially as they would have seen what had happened during the previous attack. At 2:45 a.m, the British artillery began to bombard the German lines again. By 3 a.m, my great-grandfather and his men were on standby in their trench, waiting to climb the ladders and advance on the German lines. At 3:15 a.m, the order to attack was given. My great-grandfather blew his whistle, climbed the trench ladder, and led his men out into no man's land. He would never return. I do not yet know exactly what happened to my great-grandfather after 3:15 a.m. that day, but regimental accounts provide us with a distinct impression of the situation he faced. Phrases like intense rifle fire, enemy in no way affected by the artillery bombardment, untenable position, inability to push ahead, and impossible to dislodge the enemy litter official documents and indicate the situation was indeed extreme. Those who survived the Battle of Festubert described it as murder and a sight they never wanted to see ever again. My great-grandfather's body was never recovered. Somehow, however, his whistle was retrieved and returned to my great-grandmother. We still have this whistle in our possession, and, rather grimly, it has a bullet hole in it. This could well mark the moment in time when my great-grandfather was killed. He left behind his wife and his 3-year-old son. He was just one of 16,648 British casualties at Festubert, and he, like thousands of others, still lies out there somewhere in the fields in that area. And what of Festubert? After the loss of so many lives, did the British even achieve their objective of cutting German supply lines? The short answer is no, and the battle itself has now seemingly been almost forgotten. What my great-grandfather experienced was, in reality, still only the early stage of a type of warfare which would drag on for another 3 years. When the armistice was finally signed in November 1918, an estimated 16.5 million people had been killed. About 880,000 British soldiers were killed, which equated to roughly 6% of the adult male population. And it would only be another 21 years before the Second World War broke out, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 75 million people. And the Ministry of Defence states that there have been 7,193 operational deaths in medal-earning theatres since the end of the Second World War. With figures such as these, there is a common temptation to question the purpose of the First World War and wonder what it achieved. Yet that scepticism and doubt were not necessarily true to all those who experienced and fought in the war. Their motives and understanding certainly differed, yes, but the war was not universally regarded as lacking in purpose. On the 11th of April 1918, during a huge German attack known as the Ludendorff Offensive, which came within just 40 miles of Paris, Field Marshal Douglas Haig relayed these words to the British Army. "Many among us now are tired. To those I would say that victory belongs to the side which holds out the longest. The French army is moving rapidly and in great force to our support. There is no course open to us but to fight it out. Every position must be held to the last man. With our backs to the wall and believing in the justice of our cause, each one of us must fight on to the end. The safety of our homes and the freedom of mankind alike depend upon the conduct of each one of us at this critical moment." For Haig, there was a real purpose to the war. It was to protect the liberties of people in Western Europe and uphold the integrity of the nation state in the face of foreign aggression. I cannot be sure what motivated my great-grandfather in 1914 to 1915 and whether he believed in the same ideas as Haig. I have simply not yet uncovered any documented evidence which reveals that. What I can say is that these soldiers demonstrated phenomenal courage, and in the face of great, and at times overwhelming, odds. It is precisely because of individuals like them that our liberties were protected, and as time moves us ever further from the world wars, we would do well to remember the sacrifices and courage of those who went before us. Thank you. Thank you for watching my video, and a very big thank you to all those who have supported and helped me with my work over the last few months. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you again.